There is no doubt that he has met this girl in the past. For some time, Enric tries to remember where exactly the meeting took place. If she is the child abductor, the criminal herself will soon tell everything. The captain offers her one last chance to repent, otherwise she will face the harshest sentence. It's hard to understand why the ending turned out so bad, although everything went quite well at the beginning. Not long ago, news was discussed in the house of the Marquis of Seraton that shocked everyone. The Marquis and the Marquises had not been seen for a week, although their owners usually do not leave for long. However, for some maids this is only to their advantage, as they can conduct business in peace. The owners have decided to cut salaries, but there is an excellent way to compensate for this. Moreover, Evgenia has known for a long time that the owners of the estate did not disappear at all, but died. She can speak with confidence about the future because this world is inside the novel. As happens in most cases, the girl died as a result of an awkward fall. The main character of the novel is Prince Joshua. He is the only heir of the Marquis family. But his life from the very beginning was a series of endless failures and disappointments. As a result, Joshua found the man who pushed him into hell and took cruel revenge for everything. The important detail is that this series of failures begins right now. After the disappearance of their parents, workers often complained about a lack of wages. Ultimately, the prince was sent to live with relatives along with his sister, where no one cared for the children. In the new house, there was only one person who truly loved the twins and helped them. Evgenia could have done this for much longer if not for the strange storyline. All the people who helped them for too long always died prematurely. However, Evgenia has already experienced one death at an early age and does not want a repeat. A second later, a maid bursts into the hall, demanding that she leave immediately on the butler's orders. At last, she waited for the hour when she could carry out her plan. The head butler asks everyone to calm down. He will explain in detail the reason for the meeting. Due to the disappearance of the head of the family, it became difficult to conduct business in the usual way. Until Prince Joshua comes of age, the estate will be under the management of the king. And all the servants who have worked in the house for many years must be fired today. After the meeting, the conversations did not subside. No one could understand such a harsh decision. Although Evgenia expected such an outcome, she still felt sorry for the estate's employees. And yet, you should get a good night's sleep so that you have plenty of energy for tomorrow. Tomorrow, a new life will begin, and the familiar plot of the novel will finally change. She had waited too long for this day to just give up her chance. The next morning begins quite normally, although she is already ready for something new. The main thing is that there is not a soul around, because all the maids have already left the estate. It's nice to wake up all alone, wishing yourself a good day. As expected, the employees took with them everything that was of any value. However, she does not intend to follow their example by starting a new life with a pure heart. However, expensive jewelry was collected in advance and should be here. To her horror, the maids cleaned out not only the owner's things, but her own as well. There is no doubt that it was the maids who encroached on the most valuable thing that had been accumulated. There is no time to waste if Evgenia does not want to live her whole life in poverty. Perhaps there are still some rather expensive items left in the other rooms. Having entered the Marquis's chambers, she spends some time trying to find at least one golden trinket. The owner of this body led a dissolute life, having spent all the money of her rich parents. It seems that for some workers, stealing has become a completely routine matter. Turning around sharply, she suddenly sees a young gentleman. Joshua has long been waiting for the maids who have decided to appropriate their master's wealth. He can't stand people who are used to solving problems this way. The prince did not expect that even Eugenia would decide to steal and then simply run away. She should probably apologize, even though she did quite a lot for the twins. Escape is the best course of action in such a situation, but the prince has not finished the conversation yet. He has something to say goodbye to if she stops acting like a child. Apparently, he really could offer a good deal. At the very least, to do this, you need to catch your breath and listen to him calmly. He demands that she take her seat immediately, since she has not left with the other servants. Other workers simply took the valuables and ran off in different directions. First of all, the boy thanks her for her help, because she was the only one who took care of the children. No one was required to bring food every night, but Evgenia did it. She always thought this was right because children are not to blame for adults' problems. Moreover, it was a great honor for her to work in the house of the Marquis. At this point, Joshua becomes furious again, wanting to continue the conversation. He is confident that commoners have no right to ignore aristocrats and their loved ones. Suddenly, he realizes that he originally wanted to say something completely different. Unlike the others, Eugenia never treated the heirs with disdain. She carried herself with dignity, taking on many additional responsibilities. It felt like the boy just wanted to talk, so he needed to be heard. The girl asks to talk about anything. She is ready to stay in the house for some time. Children may soon be taken away for foster care and sent to distant relatives. He won't be able to resist under pressure from the people of the duchy. Most likely, they will start doing whatever they want, getting benefits from it. Without Evgenia's help, they are too vulnerable and she simply has to fulfill her duty. Joshua asks to become their guardian, otherwise the Duke will make them pawns in his game. She heard correctly. The prince really understands what he is asking Eugenia for. He was already a very serious boy, but now he is making a major decision. In fact, such a proposal can shock anyone. She just wanted to take a few things and leave the estate peacefully. One can imagine how desperate the prince was to ask his maid for this. Instead of making stupid excuses, she decides to say everything straight out. In order to take care of her children in secret, Evgenia hid from her family's eyes for a long time. To escape, a certain amount of money is needed, but the servants have not been paid for 3 months. Eventually, Joshua and Selmia might get sick and she won't be able to help. Taking them to the hospital or providing them with medicine won't work because that costs money. The boy begins to understand that in this way she is simply refusing to help. You can't make decisions out of simple sympathy, even when you really want to. Evgenia had already made too many mistakes that once led to her death. She genuinely wants to help, but right now Joshua is asking too much. The truth is that another girl named Eileen is supposed to take the children from here. According to the plot, Eileen Blair was the youngest daughter of a baron and worked as a home teacher. At some point, she found a job with a family with a high reputation, becoming a teacher of the heirs. But 6 months ago, she was fired due to a sharp deterioration in the family's income. After working for a little while longer, she terminated her contract, not wanting to work for low wages. After this, Eileen got a job as a nurse for an elderly lady living in a distant province. Hearing news about the Marquis's family, she returns to meet the unfortunate children. This meeting is supposed to take place today, although Eileen has not yet shown up. Evgenia cannot become the guardian of the heirs, otherwise the plot will deviate from the original. At that moment, the girl hears a familiar sound, quickly returning her to reality. The time has already come, but for some reason Joshua is still with her. Eileen must arrive before the bells ring. That was the plot of the novel. Meanwhile, the bells ring louder and louder as if approaching the inevitable end. Evgenia wants to know the truth. Did the children remain in a secret place after learning about their parents' disappearance? When she brought food, the young master often went into another room. Joshua is willing to reveal the secret if she promises to agree to his request. By becoming a guardian, she will not only help the heirs, but also gain something in return. All this time, the boy speaks as if he is offering his maid a profitable deal. She finally agrees to become a guardian, although there is no other way to convince him. Immediately after this, the prince promises to take her to a secret place that no one knows about. He suggests not to waste time, because very soon they will have a new life ahead of them. It's pretty close. You just have to go forward and then turn the corner. Reaching the end of the hall, Joshua suddenly stops in front of the wall. It would be strange if this place turned out to be an ordinary passage next to the stairs. It turned out that there was another small children's room behind the wall. This is the secret place where the children have been hiding all this time. They even managed to move the toys so that the room resembled a normal room. Of course, no one has done any cleaning here, so first we need to tidy up. Joshua is proud of his work, as he crafted this cozy temporary place himself. At this moment, the ringing of the bells fades away, which means that Evgenia does not have long to wait. Eileen will arrive very soon, taking the children under her caring wing. Of course, you can't tell the prince about this, otherwise he will be offended again. He must have already done it, because she didn't even hear his last question. Adults always do this when they don't want to answer children's uncomfortable questions. Meanwhile, the young lady was still sleeping in her bed, not having heard the arrival of the maid. Joshua warns that his sister is sick and that he should be a little quieter. Before his father disappeared, the boy promised to protect Selmia with all his might. As the older brother, he is obliged to keep his promise, no matter how difficult life becomes. Looking at abandoned children, at some point you forget that you are in a novel. If she had occupied the body of an aristocrat, Eugenia would certainly have become a guardian. It seems the boy is still unsure whether the maid will fulfill the terms of the contract. She's still here, but she can escape at any time if she wants. Joshua asks to stay close. They have no one left except Evgenia. In response, the girl asks to believe her because she just moved away from Selmia. It would be better to sit on the other side, otherwise the girl might accidentally wake up. The prince behaves very sweetly, taking care of his sister like a real grown-up brother. Realizing that he was just called cute, Joshua demands that it never happen again. He considers himself an adult prince, long past childhood. When Eileen comes, she will be the one who will have to listen to the sweet child. Unfortunately, when you become part of an original story, bad things can happen. The decision to leave was the right one, but Eileen still hasn't shown up at the estate. Even after 2 hours of waiting, not a single sound was heard in the house. The main thing is to behave naturally, without arousing the prince's suspicions. Although the more time passes, the more difficult it is to keep emotions under control. It felt like Eileen had no intention of coming to pick up the children she had abandoned. By the evening, Evgenia begins to seriously worry, because this should not have happened. She really doesn't want to take on the responsibility of becoming someone's guardian. In the end, this role is given to another heroine who wants it herself. But if the children die because of her fault, Evgenia will not be able to come to terms with it. She decides to tell something since Joshua really does consider himself an adult. There is a truth that will be hard to accept, but it is better than a sweet lie. The thing is that she often doesn't have enough money, but someone else has a fortune. Understanding her hint, the boy heads in the direction where something valuable is located. The most valuable thing in life is a sister, but there is something else too. He had grabbed his mother's largest stone in advance, which could be easily sold. It would be a shame if the other servants found out about the presence of an expensive stone. These are the only things the twins had left after their parents disappeared. One piece of jewelry features a portrait commissioned from a famous artist. However, when sold, they will be considered stolen property. By the way, the ring has a fake stone, bought from a dishonest jeweler. Joshua wasn't asking her to take responsibility for their lives, if that's what she was thinking. You just need to take them to the Ace Empire, where the house of Duke Gerace is located. By doing one small favor, Evgenia will be able to take all the jewels for herself. In response to these words, the girl returns the jewelry to its rightful owner. Just one ring is enough. She will easily give the rest of the things back. There is no doubt that they will soon find themselves in the Duke's house. Evgenia agrees to fulfill the request since Eileen did not come to the rescue. According to the omen, you need to take each other by the little finger to seal the agreement. However, the prince suggests drawing up a contract, which will be much more reliable. After a short time, the boy asks to leave a signature in the right corner of the document. Evgenia hardly expected this, although in such families the children are much more experienced. The boy even imposed a fine of 1 million gold pieces for violating the terms of the agreement. She may not sign if she really decided to abandon them to their fate. To prove otherwise, Eugenia immediately signs, as the prince requested. Almost all the terms of the contract remain the same, except for one small clause. This can be considered as an oral agreement between two persons. From this moment on, she asks to be addressed as a sister, otherwise she will not agree to the deal. This way they can disguise themselves, and it's strange that the boy decided to refuse. In this case, she will not enter into an agreement, and all previous conditions can be cancelled. Realizing that there is no other way out, he quietly calls Evgenia his sister. That's better. It should have been done right away without stupid prejudices. After some time, they arrive at the place that Joshua himself indicated. There is a village near the border from where it will be easier to get to the duchy. I had to sell all my valuables to pay for the carriage ride for 3 passengers. The hotel was found quite quickly. It was located in the very center of the settlement. The novel said that at the time of the attempt on the twins' lives, the criminal killed Eileen. That's why Evgenia added a condition that they would call her sister. So it was decided to come up with nicknames, replacing their real names with them. However, the matter does not end there, because something else is needed for camouflage. Joshua hopes to wash the dye out of his hair once they cross the border of the empire. Meanwhile, the girl really likes her new color, as if she always dreamed of becoming a brunette. Evgenia asks to wait here until she gets some money for food. The family jewels were only enough to pay for the move, the rest would have to be earned. Finally, she asks once again not to go outside in an unfamiliar village. Selmia asks to take her with you. She is quite capable of helping with the work. She must be very afraid of being left without adults. That's why she behaves like this. Evgenia promises to buy some delicious candies if the girl waits in the room for a bit. There is no doubt that the promise will be fulfilled without any contracts. The older sister just needs to work a little and earn some money. It would be better if children did not know the whole truth about how difficult the situation had become. Usually when people travel, they relax rather than look for work in a foreign settlement. Having burst into the employment office, she demands to be given any available vacancy. All the notices are on the board, but you could have asked about it a little more quietly. After looking at the flyers, the girl spends some time studying local job opportunities. It turns out that there are some pretty good vacancies in the remote village that are worth considering. The only question is why it became so quiet, as if everyone had seen a ghost. You need to find a job as soon as possible before the fight for the best vacancies starts here. It's a pity, but nowhere do they pay more than 5 gold, even if the work is quite difficult. At that moment, she came across an advertisement for a maid. Need to accompany a certain gentleman who is willing to pay good money. Without thinking too long, she wants to take this particular vacancy. Evgenia is confident that she is the one who can handle this kind of work. The administrator is a little surprised, because this announcement has been hanging on the board for a month already. However, no one will object if the lady seriously decides to take this on. The employer was unable to answer why it took so long to find a contractor. After some time, she appears at the address indicated in the leaflet. The woman asks to follow her if she wishes to see Mr. Elvery. I'll have to congratulate the young lady if that gentleman wants to hire her. Before entering the room, the hotel owner advises you to cover your ears. She knocks on the door of the room so loudly, as if there was a deaf visitor living there. The fact is that the gentleman sleeps too soundly after a sleepless night. Opening the door, Elvery tries to understand the reason for the hostess's sudden visit. He suddenly realizes that she brought with her a guest who wanted to apply for a vacancy. The employer turned out to be much younger than Evgenia had imagined, although this is not important at all. The main thing is that the offer still stands, which means she's come to the right place. First, you should conduct a short interview with the new employee. He wasn't expecting guests today, so the room is a bit messy now. In fact, it can easily be confused with a pigsty, and it is unclear how one can work here. At first, the young man behaves gallantly, as if he were from a secular family. But when it comes to future work, his appearance becomes a little scary. As the advert states, he is looking for a maid to accompany him to Ace's empire. No matter how close the country is, they will have to cross the border during their trip. The girl doesn't mind this condition, and besides, they pay well for the distance of the route. Girls usually avoid tasks that involve moving, but she's not one to be scared. If the gentleman hires her, it will be the first trip in her life. I have a lot of experience working as a maid, so there are no problems with this. The truth is that it doesn't matter at all how far you have to travel. Evgenia is burning with impatience, and it would be better if the guy said something specific. Oddly enough, after a couple of minor questions, the interview ends. He hires her because there is no other person for the position. In that case, she wants to take 2 children on the trip, if no one objects. Evgenia promises to take care of everything, and the brother and sister will not interfere with the master. The problem is that he is just an assistant to the person who needs to be accompanied. If she wants to ask for something, it is better to do it in a personal conversation with him. If there is anything she needs to know before talking, she asks to be warned in advance. He advises to behave naturally and not ask about his work in too much detail. The interview turned out to be too easy, as if the most difficult part was still ahead. Despite the knock, for some reason the gentleman is in no hurry to open the door. However, the assistant decides not to wait, pushing the girl straight into his room. In fact, he could be doing personal things that no one else should see. The room was so dark, as if no one else had come here for a long time. It is impossible to understand people who constantly sit in a room with the curtains closed. Suddenly she hears a male voice coming from somewhere far away. Having chosen a place, Evgenia apologizes for disturbing her because she came about work. If the master still requires a maid, she is ready to accompany him. Enric asks to be called by his first name, without unnecessary formalities. Evgenia decides to immediately tell about the 2 children she intends to take with her. The younger brother and sister are too young to be left alone for long periods of time. If he allows this to happen, the girl will even agree to a small salary. Judging by his silence, he is thinking about anything but the maid's request. It becomes clear why the assistant advised not to talk about his work. But even if this gentleman is some kind of smuggler, one cannot deny that he is a handsome man. If Evgenia had the same face, her mood would improve every morning. Coming a little closer, he declares that the maid's face seems too familiar. Perhaps he is simply looking for an excuse to get to know you better. She insists that she is seeing the gentleman for the first time, although it would be better if this were not the case. And yet her face really does remind him of someone, but Enric just can't remember. Suddenly he remembers the moment when he first saw this maid. If he is right, Evgenia was the very kidnapper of the two missing children. In response, she asks him to look into her honest eyes and think again about what he said. This is not at all necessary, because the girl is wanted and her portrait is hung everywhere. He has no right to judge the veracity of the accusation, but the fact remains a fact. The hiring will have to be refused, otherwise Mr. Enric himself will be under suspicion. For a while, she listens to his refusal in silence, realizing that he is right. It's a shame when you had a good job in your hands and now everything goes to hell. Finally, he apologizes once again for refusing, but the girl simply has to understand this. She just wants to know if he will report this meeting to the gendarmes. It was no coincidence that Evgenia mentioned children who could be in danger. If he decides to report it to the police, she will be sent to jail and those will be sent to a shelter. In response, Enric asks not to worry about anything, promising not to tell anyone. He refuses to get involved in the troublesome affairs associated with the investigation. However, the girl must fulfill the return request, keeping this place a secret. Even if she is caught, Evgenia must not reveal his location. One thing is important, he is really afraid of something and will not go to the police himself. On the way she meets Elveri, she will have to say that she simply did not pass the interview. The assistant cannot believe that after a long search for a maid, he decided to refuse. From the outside, it seems as if he is more worried about the rejection than Evgenia herself. A little more and he will burst into tears right here, unable to cope with the surging emotions. A minute later, the guy bursts into the room of the man who has become overly demanding. It's foolish to pay attention to details, even if two children are traveling with the maid. If there is a good reason for refusal, the assistant would like to hear it right now. The only reason is that this employee is wanted. For those with hearing problems, Enric reiterates the very clear reason. It's hard to believe this because the girl herself talked about her brother and sister. Of course, they can't hire someone who has been charged with a serious crime. It's still a shame that things are going so badly and the borders are already closed. The reason for the closure is due to the fact that the soldiers of the forcibly deposed Duke are not protected. After his overthrow, border controls changed dramatically, as if a war had begun. It has become much more stringent than it was just a couple of years ago. In such a situation, the union of two foreigners cannot but arouse suspicion. The number of people is too small for this to be considered a service assignment. A generous reward has been offered for the capture of the child abductor, which will attract even more attention. It seems that a dangerous man with incredible power has been chasing her for a long time. Enric is right, a girl can create too many unwanted problems. However, the work contract with Evgenia is already ready, so Elveri would like to bring her back. It feels like this guy listens with his nose and not his ears, since he still suggests her candidacy. Still, if she really is wanted, she's unlikely to behave too openly. The assistant is confident that with Enric's strength and vast experience, they should be able to handle it. This cooperation will be beneficial for everyone, because the maid will definitely not turn them over to the police. It seems I shouldn't have given Elveri my word. He always suggests ridiculous things. However, he is right about one thing: we can no longer waste time and postpone crossing the border. He manages to sway the captain to his side. All that remains is to get the employee back. Judging by the assistant's mood, it was no coincidence that he insisted on Evgenia's candidacy. Meanwhile, the girl tries to find out a little more about what she heard. The employer was not lying when he said that she had been on the wanted list for a long time. Leaflets are posted everywhere, which means it's no longer possible to just show up at the exchange. Her face will be immediately recognized and then brought to justice for a large reward. The only strange thing is that the names of Joshua and Selmia are not indicated, as if they are unknown to anyone. Usually the leaflets contain complete information about missing people. Whatever the reason, they first need to be hidden away from public view. She quickly removes the wanted posters, hoping that no one had time to read them. At this moment, a conversation between two applicants discussing a recent incident can be heard in the hall. They say that if you kill a criminal or bring her head, you can receive a generous reward. The advertisement says that 1,000,000 gold pieces are offered for the kidnapper's head. The situation is heating up too quickly. It's better not to tempt fate and just leave. It was today that she promised to buy Selmia some candy, but wandering around the area was too dangerous. Of course, the child will be very offended to find out that he was simply fooled. Next time, the girl will not stay home if she does not fulfill her promise. At the same time, two strangers show up at the exchange looking for the same person. The director probably remembers the young man who came a month ago. In short, they need to know the name of the girl who showed up here this morning. It's a pity, but they arrived too late because the stranger had already picked up her documents. It's all Enric's fault he takes too long to choose the ideal employee. The good news is that she has to go back to the employment office because she hasn't found a job yet. Only 10 minutes have passed since she left, so we can try to catch up with her. Without wasting any time, the guys set off after her, hoping to make it in time. If the exchange director is right, it is unlikely to disappear from sight so quickly. At this moment, voices are heard behind her, although it would be better if she just returned home. Sometimes 1 minute of being late decides everything, changing your usual life. And now, instead of two new acquaintances, she is being overtaken by those who are looking for easy money. They are offering 1,000,000 gold coins for the capture of this lady, which means they will soon be rich. It is important to remember that the money should be divided equally, since they discovered it together. Realizing that there is a chance, Evgenia quickly takes a bag of pepper out of her pocket. It can't do too much harm, but the guy definitely won't be able to see. It will be quite unpleasant for a while, although he himself came across the answer. He promises to kill Evgenia as soon as he finds her and those missing children. At the very least, this requires chasing after the fleeing criminal. News of the reward has already reached those who cannot earn money in any other way. All the poor people of the village will look for her every day, wanting to take the promised reward. However, it is not possible to get out of the alley because the fugitive is being pursued by someone else. Instead of hiding from one seeker, she runs into another. She needed to run quickly before he had time to grab her and take her to the police station. The guy suggests calming down. He had no intention of handing her over to the gendarmes. The hood was for camouflage, but she would surely recognize such a familiar face. It turns out he deceived the girl, promising not to tell anyone about that meeting. Otherwise, it is impossible to explain the fact that every slacker in the village knows where to look for her. The guys promise to share with Enric, fairly dividing the reward between 3 people. He quickly asks the girl to keep her head down. It will be a little dangerous here now. It's hard to understand what he was planning, but it's better not to argue with the captain at such a moment. Taking out a revolver, Enric advises them not to approach the girl if they value their lives. It's not a joke at all if some of them still don't believe what's happening. However, it can be easily proven in practice that the revolver shoots real bullets. Having shot the most violent of them in the arm, the captain hopes for understanding. However, they will contact the police if you just leave a couple of scratches on them. The next few shots solve the problem. Now they will definitely be silent. After making sure she is okay, Enric apologizes for any inconvenience. He never answered why he was following Evgenia, taking a gun with him. The revolver came with a silencer, as if he often resorted to such methods. This thing reduces the sound when shooting, allowing you to hide unnoticed. Meanwhile, Evgenia also knows a little about weapons, although she doesn't have her own pistol. Usually ladies are not interested in this kind of thing, preferring other types of entertainment. This weapon was completely new. Not everyone has even the slightest idea about a revolver. But if an ordinary maid knew about the pistol, she was definitely hiding something else. The girl thanks him for his help. Enric arrived in this alley at just the right time. He came to hire her, but it was better to discuss the details of the matter later. It's hard to know how it will all end, but the assistant insists on her candidacy. Elvery pesters him every now and then, demanding that he sign a contract with the new employee. He's clearly not telling the whole story, as if he's going to do something illegal. But there is simply no choice, because no one else except this gentleman will agree to accept her. There is one condition that they did not talk about earlier. It is not written in the contract. It may seem a little strange, but it will be safer. He invites Eugenia to become his wife, leaving the empire under the guise of a married couple. The young man seemed to have forgotten that she had 2 small children with her who looked like rabbits. And yet the situation at the border is not very rosy, and it is becoming increasingly difficult to cross it. Soon, all roads out of the country may be closed, and then she too will remain here forever. For this reason, the easiest way would be to enter into a fictitious marriage. During the inspection, you must behave like a wife, not like an ordinary servant. If she is willing to take the risk, Enric will be waiting at the hotel entrance in the evening. Returning back, the girl tries to make sense of everything she experienced for some time. Because of a stupid ad, she was almost killed, and then she saw the death of 2 crooks. The good news is that the gentleman doesn't believe the version of the kidnapping of 2 children. So far, everything is going quite well, but you need to be careful at every step. Entering the room, she decides to please the guys. She kept her promise. The little one kept asking me to buy candy, so I had to visit a couple of candy shops. The rain has left them very wet, although Selmia asks them not to worry about it. More importantly, there are visible abrasions on Evgenia's hands from her absence. She asks Joshua to calm down, as these are nothing more than light scratches. The children surround her with their care, as if she had accomplished a feat for the sake of sweets. First of all, she needs to change her clothes, otherwise she will continue to walk around in wet clothes. Meanwhile, the prince asks about the young man she was dating. It is necessary to explain that he is an employer who wants to hire her. It's strange, but for some reason the boy is sure that Enric was just another crook. However, Selmia was on her side. She quite liked that tall gentleman. In the prince's opinion, Eugenia's behavior is no different from that of other stupid young ladies. It's also a shame that even my sister didn't support me in a simple situation. The girl reminds that he made this choice himself by proposing to enter into an agreement. Even while trying to pretend to be an adult, he continues to behave like an ordinary child. Well, it's time to talk about future work, because the children will have to do some work. Since the borders will soon be closed, it is necessary to leave the duchy as soon as possible. First, you need to move to the hotel where that same man is staying. It turned out that there was no need for long persuasion, and everyone liked the news. Besides, she now has a husband with whom she will spend a short trip. The children will go with them, and that is the whole point of the upcoming joint work. It's getting more and more interesting every day, although Joshua is hardly happy about it. He did not agree to such a condition when they signed the contract. My sister asks me not to say anything stupid, because they will be celebrating their wedding very soon. The boy is sure of the opposite, because this way they will definitely be noticed ahead of time. He got it all wrong, because it was a temporary marriage due to circumstances. You just have to pretend to be married for a few days while crossing the border. They will all have to disguise themselves as a family, but this way the problem will be solved. They will easily escape from the duchy and even earn a decent amount of money. Evgenia is worried like everyone else, but asks to endure the inconvenience for a little while longer. At this moment, there is a knock on the door. It seems the employer has already arrived. She will open the door herself, and the children will have to wait a little in the room. As expected, Enric is already ready to leave, although his assistant clearly has no intention of giving in. There is no time for unnecessary talk now, so it is worth hurrying. Having seen the gentleman up close, Selmia decides to support the idea of the wedding. True, judging by her brother's appearance, it's clear that he's in no hurry to accept a stranger into his family. It was Eugenia who suggested dyeing her hair as if Enric were the father. If you look closely, the impressions upon meeting Joshua are quite similar to the gentleman. The boy recalls that they were talking about a fictitious marriage, but no one talked about adoption. Enric doesn't care at all whether he is his son, he just needs to cross the border. If the prince thought that everyone around him would start persuading him, he was very much mistaken. He liked Elle very much more because of his lack of confidence. Besides, he behaves much more politely than this ill-mannered gentleman. The trip won't last more than a few days, so you won't have to pretend to be a family for long. The boy must understand that his behavior is creating even more problems. Of course, if Joshua is so unsure of himself, he may refuse to go. A pretty simple move on the captain's part, but it works with kids. The boy promises to prove that there is nothing in this world that he cannot do. In this case, Evgenia asks to introduce herself to the guests, since they have already agreed on everything. Selmia introduces herself first, hoping to become part of a large, pleasant company. This girl always knew how to introduce herself correctly when meeting people. Unlike her older brother does not show manners, considering it unnecessary stupidity. It's a pity, but in that case she will have to go alone, leaving the children in the hotel room. Having correctly understood the situation, the boy introduces himself by name, hoping for a pleasant conversation. The gentlemen respond just as politely, although Enric does so only out of necessity. Elvery asks not to worry about the luggage, he will deliver it to the carriage himself. The boy doesn't mind, and besides, the suitcase isn't so heavy that he can't handle it. If this is too burdensome, the girl can easily cope on her own. She apologizes for this, but the children have truly been given too much of a burden. However, when he holds her hand, the prince's mood always improves. The same can be said about the princess. She also wants to hold hands. Soon the whole company arrives at Captain Enric's house. It looks like a completely ordinary room, although it is quite wide compared to the hotel. After unpacking the luggage, Enric asks to go up to the room to discuss the details. It doesn't seem like she has a bad relationship with her children, as if they themselves asked for help. Finally, they will leave this hated village where troubles constantly happen. This must be done as soon as possible, while the Empire's borders are still open for travel. After some time, Evgenia goes up to the second floor. She arrived a little earlier than they expected, although it would be even better this way. Surely no one will mind if the twins stay with them for a while. The prince considers himself competent enough to also discuss the trip. No one tries to contradict him if the boy so persistently offers help. The roles of all those present are simple. Enric and Eugenia will be spouses, and the twins will be their children. It was decided in advance about Elvery he would play the role of chamberlain and coachman. If the names are fictitious too, Selmia has already come up with a great one. Enric has nothing more to add, the rest will become known on the spot. If the girl has a nickname, Elvery suggests using it during the crossing. For example, you can call her Hari. Such a name will definitely not discredit you at the border. Of course, the last name will also be changed to his own. It feels like she's really marrying this man, even if it's only for a few days. It's a little awkward to go through something like this, even knowing the falsity of the situation. But if this is the only way to escape, it is worth forgetting prejudices. Otherwise, they will be stuck in the village for a long time, becoming easy prey for the local unemployed. You don't have to worry about the nickname, she will react to it quickly. Throughout her past life, she was called Hari, and she had long since gotten used to it. She actually reacts so quickly as if the name was real. Elvery is ready to start processing IDs, it will take some time. The girl reminds that children should call her Hari when strangers are around. It feels like everything around Selmia is just child's play. Suddenly, there is a loud knock on the door, although the captain did not invite guests. Perhaps that man tracked down Evgenia and came here with the police. Enric gestures to his assistant to take action and take charge of the matter. Approaching the door, he asks to answer who has arrived at such a late hour. It turned out that, despite the request, the owner decided to go up to the third floor. There was no one on the second floor, but the problem that arose was much more serious. Today she burned her hand, so she won't be able to cook the promised dinner. If you like, she could very well lend me the kitchen, although it would be really awkward to talk about it. Evgenia asks not to worry about anything, she can handle it perfectly well on her own. It seems the children were hungry since they had eaten almost nothing after lunch. Just don't make a sour face, otherwise the prince will have to bring her to her senses. Besides, there is at least one person in the house who is capable of cooking dinner. That's what she thought until Enric volunteered to be personally present in the kitchen. It is unclear what prompted the man to offer help, but he also volunteered to cook. I must say, he chose a cute apron, very suitable for a tall brunette. Together they can handle it much faster, especially since the children haven't eaten anything for a long time. If something needs cutting, he can do it better than any head chef. In the end, dinner was prepared so quickly that they didn't even have time to come to their senses. After long periods of travel, this food seems like the most delicious thing there is. Enric advises not to rush while eating, otherwise everyone will have stomach aches later. Meanwhile, Joshua has one question if the gentleman doesn't mind. He still didn't understand where Enric got the information about closing the borders. The prince still has a lot to learn in the future when he comes of age. Immediately after the death of the previous duke, the duchy was divided into two factions. To ascend the throne, the illegitimate child of the previous ruler pretended to be Joshua's brother. They say that after the usurpation of the throne, he became the duke's assistant, helping with minor errands. Subsequently, the true heir becomes a fugitive and a criminal in the eyes of the people. It is difficult to explain to a small child that his life is in mortal danger. Meanwhile, when crossing the border, you need to introduce yourself as residents of Ace. Even with ID, they would have aroused suspicion, so they had to ask for help. The captain briefly tells a fictitious legend that you should know in advance. According to legend, he is an aristocrat who came to fetch his wife and 2 children. This is quite sufficient for explanations if the inspectors have questions. After this, Enric suggests eating a little more, otherwise the prince will never grow up. The boy does not like it when people treat him too childishly, considering himself quite grown up. Creating fake documents will not take more than a week if everything goes well. During this time, you need to sort out other matters and prepare the children. A meeting with the traders is already scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, which means a short walk is ahead. She needs to change her clothes because in this outfit, Evgenia doesn't look like an aristocrat at all. You should choose at least 3 dresses, several pieces of jewelry, and a headdress. The paired jewelry will be the last ones, as these are the hardest to get. On this continent, there is a special stone that every married aristocrat wears. It turns out that she will have to wear expensive jewelry, although the employer pays for everything. However, the pair of jewelry already exists. Evgenia got it from her parents. If possible, Enric asks to see the items to determine their status. In response, she asks to wait a couple of minutes. She needs to ask Joshua about something. It's a little awkward to ask this, but only the prince can give permission. If he borrowed the brooch and pendant, the girl would return it in a few days. To disguise yourself as a married couple, you need a pair of jewelry that is difficult to find. She apologizes again for being so rude, but it's really important now. Realizing that he has no other choice, the boy gives away his late parents' jewelry. Thanking him, she promises to take good care of the things so dear to his heart. As usual, the prince asks not to make a drama because he did nothing special. These are just expensive trinkets that the twins inherited. The next day, they go to the store, having warned about their visit in advance. There aren't many wealthy clients in the village who would be able to visit a boutique like this. The seller assures that all precious fabrics are brought from overseas and are of high quality. It's hard to understand, though, why they suddenly needed mourning clothes. Hearing this, the girl begins to cry, immediately remembering everything bad from her past life. Enric had no idea that the treatment of customers would be so rude. According to legend, her father recently died, and now she has to play the role of an inconsolable daughter. Until all the sadness leaves her heart, she will mourn for her beloved father. The husband promises to grieve with her because this is the only way to support his beloved wife. Together they will survive the loss, and the father's soul will rejoice, looking down on them from heaven. Ludwig tells the employees to get moving. They need to do everything to help the unfortunate woman. He is ready to give her the best fabrics available in the store, especially for her. First of all, you need to take measurements. A separate employee of the studio will do this. The problem is that underneath Evgenia's cape, she's still wearing old, ordinary clothes. Enric asks not to complicate matters. It is enough to simply give away a few dresses. He asks not to worry about the size because his wife is pregnant with her 3rd child. Without even understanding the meaning of what was said, she simply repeats the phrase after her fake husband. A second later, the girl suddenly realizes how seriously Enric is saying this. He is confident that the 3rd child will look like his wife and become just as beautiful. I guess I should have stopped, otherwise she might actually believe it. Ludwig asks to wait a little while the assistants pack the clothes. Evgenia asks for an explanation. They did not agree to talk about a 3rd child. They actually managed to deceive them, but only thanks to her personal talent. If another girl had played the role of his wife, he would have had a lot of problems. In response, Enric asks them not to get excited. They did an excellent job with the paired task. She hopes that from now on the plan will be discussed in advance, avoiding any surprises. Returning back, they are met by an assistant, although Elveri's appearance does not inspire good. There are no problems with the IDs, but I couldn't get a marriage certificate. The situation in the country is so bad that even the master wanted to leave here. The master asks to take him on the trip if there is one free seat in the carriage. The captain is ready to accept him, but he must work strictly according to their conditions. The departure date will be determined by Enric, and he is obliged to agree and do everything on time. After some time, Evgenia reports the news that they are leaving tomorrow afternoon. Everything is ready for departure, so you can safely pack your things. After arriving at Ace's empire, you will need to disperse to avoid arousing suspicion. The carriage ride will take about a day, so everyone should get a good night's sleep. A little later, it becomes clear that the children are not going to sleep at all. These pajamas look like children's pajamas, but Selmia likes that kind of thing. The same cannot be said about Joshua. He did not agree to dress in such a stupid outfit. But I still have to sleep in it, because in a second Evgenia will put out the candles. Ultimately, in the dark, no one sees the strange pajamas on the prince. The children fall asleep quite quickly, but their fake sister continues to think about her own things. Thoughts just keep popping into my head. A lot of unusual things have really happened lately. It was she who had the most difficult role to play during the move. If something goes wrong, it could lead to problems for her and everyone else. For the sake of her heirs, she is ready to do anything, just to be able to collect her thoughts. No matter what happens, she will still protect them, even if the plan fails. Suddenly, she notices a strange glow appearing inside the family stone. It feels like it's reflecting the moonlight, beckoning you to come closer. Evgenia decides to go out onto the balcony. She won't be able to sleep normally anyway. It's strange, but there's another person here who also couldn't sleep. If Enric trains every night, it's no wonder he looks tired. Despite the fact that tomorrow is a difficult task, he does not stop training. Noticing her, he asks her not to follow her example and go to bed. The day will be difficult. Moreover, it is a little more convenient for him to train alone if she doesn't mind. At moments like these, you remember novels where the heroine looks at her lover from the balcony. However, their romance is completely different, and the meeting should never have happened. Evgenia behaved a little incorrectly. She should have gone inside straight away. Now he might think that she enjoyed watching the night training. The next day, every detail of the image was completely ready. Anyone who saw her in a morning dress would immediately believe the legend to be true. The children also look quite convincing, and even their hair evokes mournful thoughts. Getting used to the role of Chamberlain, Elveri asks the young lady to tread more carefully. The young gentleman may also come in if he is prepared for a short journey. At this moment, he sees another fellow traveler who wants to go with them. If anyone was in real mourning, it was the forger of the documents. He really does seem too depressed to leave his home country. Enric will be riding alongside the carriage, so you can call him if needed. If everyone is ready, you can start the trip and take a short break in the evening. Once they cross the border, they will finally find themselves in Ace's empire and can breathe a sigh of relief. Until then, however, one must remain vigilant, remembering the difficult task at the border. They will certainly be questioned in an attempt to extract truthful information. A day later, the crew arrives at the border, but the guards order them to turn around. Enric reminds them of his high position, which obliges them to open the gates. However, crossing the border is not possible without prior inspection. The captain of the guard asks for the necessary identification documents. According to the documents, he is Baron Enric Treyson, and there are no problems with that. One thing is unclear: why Mr. Enric was still in a foreign country. If there is a baroness and 2 children in the carriage, the guard would like to conduct an inspection. Entering the carriage, he apologizes for disturbing, but the reason for his arrival remains unknown. She explains that the news of her father's death arrived only recently, otherwise they would not have delayed. In addition, there are a number of other questions whose answers should be known. They mainly concern marital status and the real names of relatives. It seems that this is not the first time she has undergone such an interrogation. The girl copes with the task perfectly. There is only one request that the captain decided to leave for last. To see her face, the Baroness must remove her mourning headdress. He is willing to disregard etiquette for the sake of a thorough identity check. It is clear that the captain of the guard saw her portrait on the leaflet and will be able to recognize the criminal. If the truth is revealed right now, everyone else will come under suspicion. Suddenly she hears the frightened voice of the prince, calling Eugenia his mother. Addressing her as a real mother, the boy asks her to go home quickly. It feels like at this moment a completely new sensation awakens inside. She asks for forgiveness from her children, around whom her mother wanted to be kind. However, one impudent person does not seem to understand which person he is trying to insult. She may well take off her hat, but the captain must be prepared to take responsibility. Even after learning of his father's death, he does not show the Baroness due respect. The guards have been acting too rudely lately. It's time to check. She promises to report the incident personally to the head of the country if he continues this circus. The only person above her is the head of public order, and he will certainly be interested. Hearing this, the captain announces the completion of the inspection, apologizing for the inconvenience. In that case, there is no point in lingering any longer in the company of local boors. It is hard to imagine what Evgenia went through during the personal examination. If they had talked for another couple of minutes, she would have probably passed out from fear. Fortunately, everything ended well, and now they will cross the border. The crew actually makes it to the other side, having accomplished the almost impossible. Many have tried to cross the border of the Empire, but previously only a few succeeded. Having entered the forest, Enric stops the horse, asking the coachman to do the same. The master did a great job with his role, but that was the end of their contract. He asks to hand over the crew to an assistant, continuing the further journey on his own. Suddenly the horses take off, which was definitely not part of the original plan. No one expected the carriage to continue its journey to Ace's empire so quickly. Having covered the children with her body, Evgenia asks them to remain calm. Now everything will become clear. Surely Enric is already pursuing the carriage, which means he will be able to rectify the situation. It is difficult to understand from the coachman's appearance what exactly caused what was happening. Whatever the case, children need to be protected if this person is planning something terrible. Only she can become a support for them until Captain Enric comes up with something. Meanwhile, the guys demand that the scoundrel stop the horses, otherwise they will shoot. It seems the master can't wait to get a bullet in the back of the head and die right in the forest. This is easy to arrange, especially if there is simply no other way out. Taking aim at the coachman, he tries to choose the best moment to shoot. However, Evgenia, who got out of the carriage while it was moving, spoiled the plans a little. By shooting right now, he would expose the girl to too much risk of falling. He orders everyone to get inside immediately, promising to deal with it quickly. It would have been better if he had said this a little earlier, while she was still firmly on her feet. The girl barely managed to hold on, finding herself on the brink of instant death. Luckily, she manages to get back on her feet, using her last bit of strength to maintain her balance. Right now, she has to crawl back, covering the two children with her body. No one else can do this, but this is the only way to be saved. A second before the shot, Enric asks his assistant to move a little to the side. To avoid casualties, you need to hit the carriage wheel exactly. It must be said that the captain never experienced any difficulties in shooting. Having hit the target exactly, he manages to deprive the scoundrel of his main advantage. A minute later, he bursts into the carriage, hoping that everyone is safe and sound. Evgenia asks to take the children from here, and she herself will get out of the carriage after them. The journey turned out to be much more dangerous than they had planned before leaving. The main character is Evgenia, who managed to convince the captain of the guard. But now she has done another thing that deserves special compliments. Having made sure that everything is all right, Enric wants to look one scoundrel in the eyes. It seemed that the master was already dead, since he had shown no signs of life all this time. It is clear that he was bribed and someone managed to obtain information about the escape, just in case he takes with him the evidence found next to the body of the dead coachman. Unfortunately, during the sudden breaking, Selmia lost consciousness. The girl does not come to, although quite a lot of time has passed since then. Something needs to be done urgently, otherwise big problems will soon arise. She entrusts her to Elvery for a while, promising to return in a couple of minutes. Since they are in the forest, you can use the fruits of medicinal plants. From past experience, she knows that sometimes such plants can save lives. You just need to give her a few drops, and the life-giving power of the fruit will do its job. Perhaps it was no coincidence that she happened to be nearby at just such a moment. It worked. The princess really is starting to show the first signs of life. The juice seemed so sweet that I wanted to wake up and try another drop. This was probably the happiest moment that the prince will never forget. He is ready to cry with happiness when he sees his beloved younger sister awakening. She is the only relative left after her parents' death. If it weren't for Evgenia, the miracle might not have happened, and a shadow would have hung over Joshua's life. Apparently, the girl was in severe shock, and her loss of consciousness was not related to trauma. There is no doubt that after eating the fruit, the temperature will drop. However, it is better to eat another fruit. This will help strengthen the baby's health. However, Enric wants to talk before she goes to get the fruits. The conversation is very serious because such a drama might not have happened. It is worth explaining her actions when she suddenly stepped outside the moving carriage. According to her plan, everything should have happened differently if she had gotten to the coachman. But even if so, the captain does not believe that a fragile girl could cope with a man. Evgenia decides to reveal a little secret to make her answer sound convincing. Powder has helped in difficult situations more than once, when the coachman would not have been able to drive the carriage. The girl just wanted to help, because at that moment she was the only one with the children. If something bad happened to her own life, it would not be as valuable as the lives of her children. For some reason, Enrik was sure that he looked like a complete brat in her eyes. Moreover, she forgot about one detail that was clearly stated in the cooperation agreement. According to the agreement, they leave the duchy together, reaching the Ace Empire. So now it's his turn to ensure safe passage to the Empire. If she doesn't trust Enrik, she should remember herself at the moment of signing the contract. The truth is that even then the girl was not completely confident in her actions. She was never such an important person that noble people took her into account. Evgenia is just a secondary character who has shouldered a heavy burden. Children became the meaning of life, although it is known what will happen at the end of the novel. Just like last time, the girl will lose her life, leaving the children alone. It seems that at some point Eugenia resigned herself to her fate, unable to abandon her heirs. However, Enrik thinks otherwise, insisting that Eugenia is much more important than many others. Self-sacrifice is not a solution that cannot be avoided. Even if she is not a real mother, children will never be able to come to terms with such a loss. For a long time she struggled with fate, trying to change their unenviable future. In fact, Evgenia kept forgetting that the plot of the novel was constantly changing. She suddenly realizes that she has been following a storyline that no longer exists. Sometimes we are all a little mistaken. It is just important to realize it in time. Enrik asks to stretch out his hand. He needs to do something quite ordinary. It had nothing to do with understanding life, but her palm was badly wounded. Now it's time to return to the children. They've been waiting for their almost real mother. It's hard to tell whether this was a joke or whether the captain was hinting at something. Meanwhile, Enrik had a little surprise prepared for Joshua. The boy looked at the horse with such curiosity as if he wanted to ride it. However, after one story with horses, she would not want to experience a second one. If a girl needs help, Enrik is ready to fulfill any request. For example, you can do the same thing that her little charge has already done. Grabbing the girl tightly, he sits her down next to the prince in one movement. They have never been so close before. This moment becomes a turning point. Perhaps if Joshua had not been here, the captain would have done something else. Having imagined this picture, Evgenia doesn't even notice how she begins to show a reaction. I had to come up with all sorts of stupid things to try to justify my strange gesture. She assures that she is fine, but today is quite a difficult day. The halt was supposed to be different, but now we will have to stay in uncomfortable conditions. First of all, he took care of Selmia. She was badly hurt during the trip. A sick child cannot sleep on the bare ground, but others can easily cope. Besides, the boys remain on night watch. The rest can go to bed. For the first time in her life, Evgenia falls asleep right on the street, seeing the starry sky before going to bed. Tomorrow is a difficult day. We need to find another medicine for the princess. The stone begins to reflect the moonlight again, as if responding to someone's voice. An inner voice tells me that the world around me will change very soon. Someone quietly hums a familiar song, as if taking the girl back to the distant past. It's strange that tired children decided to have a little fun before going to bed. However, Selmia had been asleep for a long time, and her brother would not sing all alone. It turns out that she was dreaming all this time, although sleeping in such conditions is very problematic. Meanwhile, Enrik was still here, while his assistant was scouting out the local situation. Even if she agrees to replace him, the captain will hardly be able to get a good night's sleep. Evgenia begins to wonder why he never tried to take a nap in nature. Enrik has been suffering from insomnia for a long time, a problem that often prevents him from gaining strength. However, this does not mean that you should close your eyes to the problem and simply accept it. Peppermint oil and medicinal dried leaves are available just for such a case. If you drink them like regular tea, it will help relieve fatigue, gradually plunging you into sleep. The girl assures that this has helped many people who also suffered from insomnia. The aroma of the decoction is quite pleasant, as if she added a pinch of magic along with the mint. He must have noticed how suddenly the headache that had been tormenting Enrik since the morning disappeared. Lack of sleep is often accompanied by headaches, so it is best to apply it to the temple and the back of the neck. This will also be beneficial, as the effect of the tea will be much stronger. The ointment is quite easy to obtain. Evgenia is not at all against giving him both jars. Let this be considered a friendly gift to the person with whom you share joy and sadness. She didn't say what she wanted at all, because such feelings are shared with those closest to her. Perhaps due to the big difference in status, she cannot consider him as such. However, Enrik happily accepts the gift from his close friend. He promises to use it wisely and someday reciprocate with the same kindness. The girl once again reminds that it is better to do everything at once when your head starts to hurt. However, healthy sleep is the best cure for headaches. It must be said that she really has a good understanding of herbs and medicinal plant fruits. The only question is, where did this ordinary maid get so much unusual knowledge from? Enric is confident that with her talent, Eugenia should manage her own pharmacy. She admits that since childhood she has strived for a luxurious life in a big city. However, the dream remained just a dream, and life turned in a completely different direction. After my father's death, I had no one to rely on, so I had to look for a regular job. Meanwhile, she had long noticed how many questions the captain had. He doesn't see anything wrong with this, because in a situation like this, you need to talk about something. Remembering the past, sometimes she feels sad and wants to turn back time. Her father was an excellent herbalist, but for some reason Eugenia was not allowed to do this. This is not a skill that can be learned by reading a few books. Besides, it's stupid to study herbalism from books when your father is a master of it. She suddenly realizes that her experience in herbalism really does look a little strange. No matter how much she tries to remember her childhood, almost nothing useful comes to mind. Until a certain age, all memories seem to be deliberately erased from memory. There is only one memory in which little Evgenia got lost in the forest. 3 days later, she was found at the highest point of the forest, alive and well. Thanks to wild animals, she found safety and lived without human help. Perhaps it was at that moment that she was able to study the properties of some medicinal herbs. Ignoring the question, she continues to delve into the distant past. Having come to her senses, Evgenia suddenly decides to study to become a pharmacist if she is accepted into the academy. There are many precious herbs in the empire, so there will be no problem with work. She will be able to create many medicines while doing what she truly loves. Of course, she will come up with a cure for insomnia, especially for Captain Enric. The whole night passed in such an atmosphere until the sun illuminated the earth with its bright rays. Most importantly, Selmia's condition improved, and the next morning the girl was completely healthy. Within hours, they reach Ace's empire, completing the arduous journey to freedom. Enric asks to get ready. They are about to search your personal belongings. You don't have to prepare as hard as you would for border inspection. It's simpler here. Elvery also tries to calm her down. The knights won't bother her with detailed questions. Coming closer, the guard asks to see identification documents. To appear more convincing, Enric asks the guards not to linger. The check was an unnecessary undertaking that simply took up valuable time. Seeing the gentleman's name, he asks for forgiveness for the delay, wishing him a good journey. He demands that the gates be opened to allow the respected gentleman and all his companions to enter. It seems that he is truly respected, since the guard changed his attitude so abruptly. It would be fair to say that they were scared to death that they had only delayed Enric for a minute. If they got through so easily, he simply had to explain the reaction of the local guards. Once you get home, the first thing you should do is take a hot bath. Only this time Joshua asks not to come in. He is quite capable of washing himself. It's good that Evgenia noticed this right away, although for some reason this detail had eluded her before. As soon as Selmia's hair was washed, it immediately returned to its original color. I wouldn't want to spend the rest of my money on paint if I don't really need it. The girl doesn't mind dyeing her hair black again, but she asks to wait a little while. She will be able to break up with Enric soon, so it's just worth waiting. The taste of local beer is very reminiscent of the taste of your native, beloved city. I would love to come back here again and again if I lived somewhere near the brewery. Evgenia also really likes the city, although the main reason was completely different. She only now notices one strange detail that needs to be explained. Even today, Enric wears gloves as if he hadn't taken them off since his return. The food Enric prepared was so delicious that Selmia ate her fill. I would like to eat it from morning until evening, but this is hardly permissible for a lady. If everyone is satisfied, Enric asks the children to go first, leaving the adults alone. This conversation will only concern the elders, so children should not be listening. The prince has long considered himself old enough to discuss important issues. Evgenia promises to tell them everything in detail when she visits them a little later. Selmia tries to behave quietly, wanting to remain unnoticed at the common table. Realizing that she would be kicked out anyway, she thanks them for the dinner, wishing them pleasant conversation. We should start with the main thing. There is no longer any point in hiding truthful information from each other. They put a lot of effort into this trip. Now it's time to say goodbye. Evgenia knew that sooner or later this would happen, but it is always difficult to prepare for this. She didn't think it would happen today, hoping to delay the moment a little. And yet, thanks to the young people, Eugenia was able to take the heirs out of the duchy. Finally, she wants to know whether her wanted list is still valid within the empire. Enric asks not to worry about this because the duchy does not hand over wanted lists. He would be very grateful if she returned her fake ID back. She should be given something else after all. Eugenia was a woman with 2 children. The promised reward still stands, despite the mutual benefit. Here is the full amount of her fee, to which is added a separate thank you from each one. There is no point in counting the amount of money, because it will take too much time. Elvery leaves first. He needs to prepare something for tomorrow's workday. For a whole year, Enric kept her gift under his clothes, handling it with extreme care. You can be sure that the jewel has no flaws due to his fault. In fact, he also has some things to do, so Enric also intends to go to the room. The Empire is much safer than the duchy, but he still advises buying only good things. Also, don't put yourself on display, as Evgenia will ensure your complete safety. And of course, Enric wouldn't be himself if he didn't invite the girl to go for a little walk. The tree next to the house was so huge, as if it had been growing there for hundreds of years. It seemed that life would really change, instilling hope for a brighter future. However, the captain was interested in something else. The girl knew exactly how his pistol worked. He will have to reveal the secret information that prompted him to return to the capital. Having reminded him about the gun, Enric asks to tell him about it in a little more detail. Perhaps she even knows how to shoot, since she understands the new weapon so well. She convinces us otherwise, because knowing the mechanism and being able to shoot are not the same thing. In a past life, a person would be caught red-handed if they found out they had a weapon. The main oddity is why Enric is asking about shooting skills for the second time. He wants to answer the truth, but something stops the captain at the last moment. In fact, he really doesn't trust this girl who is hiding too much. After the incident in the alley, doubts about her only increased, although they were there before. In the end, he simply offers to lend his personal weapon for self-defense. In response, Evgenia asks not to worry about her life, especially since the weapon will remain in the holster. In that case, it's worth accepting at least this, since the gun will never be needed. The girl knows perfectly well that Enric received this thing as a keepsake, and now he wants to give it away. At the next meeting, she can return it back or do it in a year. If the meeting does not take place, she promises to bury her right in front of the tree. This will make it much easier to remember the place without confusing it with someone else. The stone tower will serve as a secret sign where he should dig a small hole. Apart from the 2 of them, no one else in the whole world knows about this sign. It's a pity that the sign turned out so fragile, because the tower collapses from a simple touch. For some reason, Evgenia is sure that no one will destroy someone's sincere desire. Without finishing her sentence, she thanks him for the help he provided during their journey. I would like to thank his assistant with all my heart. It's just a pity that Elvery is not around. In fact, everyone understands the importance of the last minute of a meeting. They will never see each other again, leaving this adventure in the depths of their memory. Today, Enric and Eugenia say goodbye forever, knowing that it is terribly stupid. Meeting her at home, Joshua demands an explanation for his stupid behavior at the table. It seems that the little prince still hasn't gone to bed, where he belongs. She returned late only because she was saying goodbye to her friends for the last time. It's a bit of a shame that they only said goodbye to her, forgetting about Joshua and Selmia. However, that is not all, because the prince must take back what he once borrowed. The pendant and brooch are completely intact. You can be sure of that. They handled them as carefully as possible. At this moment, the girl hears a strange voice, although its lips do not move. The boy doesn't understand what's going on, because he really was standing there silently. It turns out that after the difficult move, Selmia began talking in her sleep, although her voice was different. This often happens to old people because only Evgenia heard the voice. She is much older than Joshua, although she does not consider herself an old woman at all. Judging by his appearance, the boy becomes much more comfortable in Evgenia's presence. Previously, he avoided long conversations, but now he began to sleep more soundly when she was around. There will be a lot to do tomorrow, so it's better to get a good night's sleep and gain fresh energy. There is no doubt that the voice that sounded in the hallway was asking about her return. This voice is very reminiscent of the one that Evgenia heard in her dream. But right now, I don't want to hear anything except silence and the slight sound of the wind. Soft moonlight bursts into the room again, as if reminding of something very important. The next day was indeed a busy day, but that only applied to adults. Selmia spent a long time choosing a treat, settling on a strange pink thing. Now she will have to eat absolutely everything she holds in her hand on her own. This does not apply to the wooden stick, which can be thrown into the nearest trash can. The small problem is that all this time the prince is walking around completely alone. The boy stands in front of the forge for a long time, admiring the work of local craftsmen. If he feels the same way as his sister, it's worth buying him some souvenir. However, if he wants a real sword for himself, Evgenia may have problems. Having bought the necessary medicinal herbs and necessary things, she decides to go back. Finally, it's worth stopping by the information desk while they're here. She asks for a map of Ace's empire. It will be useful for one important matter. Using the map, you can easily find the road leading to the lands of the duchy. These words make one feel a little uneasy, as if Evgenia was planning to go back. What's happening seems so new that it's hard to stay still. The princess assures that she will just look at something and then immediately return back to them. The girl doesn't seem to understand how dangerous it is to behave like this in an unfamiliar city. Not listening to the stupid grumbling, she continues to run forward without looking back. Lately, it is difficult to hear prohibitions, which are only becoming more numerous. Selmia finds them too similar and moreover too boring. She probably said it in the heat of the moment, although it sounded pretty funny coming from her. In any case, she won't run too far, knowing that others are worried. That same evening, the map of the village where they were staying was opened for general study. The Duchy of Geras was much larger and located very close. Once there, you might meet the twins' great-aunt if possible. Before this, Selmia asks permission to ask just one question. She wants to ride in the carriage again if another trip is planned. The problem is that the girl's weakened health does not recommend such trips. However, if the journey doesn't take long, the consequences can be avoided. This time Joshua wants to ride in comfort, unlike what happened in the forest. Once Evgenia delivers them to her relative, her work will be completely finished. After that, she will return to her lonely life, as it should be according to the plot. It will be difficult to get used to loneliness, recalling happy moments. Even now, imagining the future, she can hardly contain herself from the overwhelming emotions. I want to hear this laughter again, which will soon be a thing of the past. The next day they arrive in the neighboring duchy, where it was much colder. Evgenia suggests doing a little preparation before heading to the estate. Today they are to meet with a noble lady, but first they need to find an inn. There's a nice place near the station, so you won't have to go far. Having taken a free room, she decides to quickly sort through the things she took on the trip. At this moment, Evgenia realizes that she has made one very unpleasant mistake. The scarf belongs to Enric. She completely forgot to return it during the walk. Next time you need to bury it along with the card next to that tree. However, if she returns even the scarf, nothing else will remind her of this person. In any case, this will happen in a year. There is time to think everything over properly. Meanwhile, Joshua called her several times, but she seemed not to hear anyone around her. It turned out that the girl decided to go out for a short while, promising to return in 10 minutes. The princess asks to be taken with him, and the brother can easily be alone for a while. I don't want to refuse, but Evgenia really should look around before the trip. It's more convenient to do this alone, especially since it shouldn't take too much time. Joshua demands that she keep her word if she is sure about a quick return. Otherwise, she will be considered a liar who has deceived the children for the second time in a row. He will personally monitor order. There is not a single man here except him. There is no need to worry too much after all. They know Evgenia very well. Joshua asks to come a little closer, during which time they will have time to discuss something. The girl probably has no idea what thoughts are going through the young prince's head. Let this be their little secret that no one in the whole world will know about. It's strange, but Evgenia returns so quickly, as if she had only walked around the house. Even during such a short absence, the girl managed to miss her very much. Selmia is acting a little unnatural because she returned almost immediately. However, everything was ready to quickly give the hair its natural color. You can't show up like this, otherwise the grandmother won't recognize her grandchildren. The children don't greet the news with joy, as if they're not telling the whole story. Before you start, you need to collect more water. This will make it easier to wash off the paint. Soon the black dye will come off the hair, returning it to its original color. However, children have already become accustomed to the new images, accepting black as the usual norm. The princess liked him much more, making them look a little more mature. Also, when this color returns, strange things start to happen. The boy demands that it stop immediately before he completely loses his temper. It's hard to understand what's going on with them, but it wasn't by chance that Joshua interrupted his sister's words. Apparently, she is trying to say something, but he forbids her to tell the truth. If they have something to tell, it's better to do it right now. In addition, Evgenia decides to warn about the difficulty of getting used to a new home. At first glance, the village seems like a pretty good place to live. All the goods from local merchants are of quite high quality, and the people are friendly. They claim that they live peacefully only thanks to the efforts of the ducal family. However, you don't often see them on the street. This privilege is only available to rich people. When all the relatives had gathered at the Duke's house, he stopped receiving any guests. He declared that he would not open the doors of his house even if the emperor himself came to visit. They say that the Duke is currently in the capital and will return around this time. The news was pretty bad, but Evgenia wasn't used to trusting street gossip. It's better to check everything yourself than to blindly trust rumor and its ridiculous inventions. However, there is still a chance to contact their grandmother using a proven method. So she decides to send a personal letter addressed to Lady Jacqueline. There are doubts that the doors to their home will open before the end of the family event. Perhaps she will get a job as a maid, becoming closer to the ladies. Joshua realizes she will need proof of the children's noble origins. Otherwise, everything may end badly, and the trip will not bring results. Although it is not the Marquise's jewel, there is a small chance of convincing Lady Jacqueline. Realizing that they will lose time again, the boy decides to go all in. There is one piece of evidence that will be the most convincing. Grandma can't deny that this is the only hair color her cousins have. Having such evidence in hand, Evgenia will be completely calm. Your hair will grow back quickly, so you don't have to worry about ruining your hairstyle. However, his actions are surprising. The prince solves complex problems very skillfully. Even without the help of an adult, he finds what only the best intellectuals can do. She promises to show it to their grandmother, even if the doors are closed for a long time. There is no doubt that the success of their little idea is almost guaranteed. It's a pity, but the very next day another problem appears out of the blue. Recruitment has been declared closed, even though relatives from all over the country have gathered at the house. It is strange that at this very moment the Duke decides to cut staff to a minimum. When the goal is right in front of you, you need to find any way to achieve it. The first thing you should do is go to a herbalist's shop in case someone gets sick. There must surely be dried thyme or some other herbal mixture there. At this moment, someone starts arguing loudly, attracting the attention of all the passers-by. It seems like the seller considers himself a real expert, trying to convince the buyer. But the main thing is that Evgenia seemed to have already met the young man who came to the shop. The one who sent Cheyenne to the shop strictly forbade buying anything other than a mower. The seller claims that the Muverick and the Hecken have the same effectiveness. Even the herbs look very similar, and he has already talked about the plant's properties many times. If Cheyenne continues to distract him from his work, the man will simply refuse to sell. Unable to bear such rudeness, he advises the guy to look for his goods in another shop. This is where the conversation ends, because the seller has just wasted a lot of time. It feels like all the salespeople here hate their own customers. Suddenly, a female voice is heard. Someone wants to buy a Hecken instead of Cheyenne. Without wasting any time, he quickly collects the scattered herbs before the girl leaves. However, we are talking about a different product, because she does not intend to buy ordinary grass at all. Like her previous client, Evgenia finds Hecken ineffective and completely useless. Muverick is much better, especially if you start the right treatment in time. The customer must have been experiencing joint pain and asked to buy the first thing that came to mind. Muverick is an old folk remedy that reduces arthritis pain. Compared to it, Hecken only looks similar in appearance but is inferior in medicinal properties. This is a completely different plant, and the seller simply cannot not know simple things. Hecken will simply weaken the effect of the Muverick if the boss only used it. With these words, she directly accused him of fraud, scaring off potential clients. Evgenia reminds that with such extensive experience, he is obliged to distinguish between different herbs. If he passes off a cheap plant as an expensive one, this is profiteering through fraud. There is a good pharmacy nearby, so it is better to turn to real professionals. Meanwhile, the man faces police action if he does not leave the market voluntarily. It worked, although such scoundrels always find a way to return to their old methods. There's a good herbal shop on the other side, not far at all. After some time, they quickly find the moharic among other plants. Cheyenne has never carried out such tasks before, so he is too easy to deceive. Goods in good shops are always more expensive, but you shouldn't skimp on your health. Having said goodbye to the young man, Evgenia wishes him good health. Strangely enough, Cheyenne immediately guessed that she had arrived at the market straight from the duchy. It is difficult to distinguish between the inhabitants by appearance, as they wear approximately the same things. However, her accent is slightly different, a unique rhythm that is unique to the people of the duchy. If he is so attentive, he may well know about the child abductor. Cheyenne wants to thank her for her help, but first she would like to know the stranger's name. I have to explain why she can't meet young men. Any help must be rewarded, otherwise the guy will be considered a debtor. The girl asks to behave with restraint, otherwise her attitude will change dramatically. The guy apologizes. He accidentally grabbed her without permission. This cannot be considered a simple courtesy because it really helped a lot. If it's because she doesn't trust strangers, Cheyenne can understand that. A person you meet for the first time should not persistently ask for your name. Anyone in Evgenia's place would be just as confused, although she's holding up well. Having decided to start with himself, he suddenly declares that he has been working all his life for the family of Duke Gerase. Although Cheyenne's position is quite low, Lord Geradia highly values his merits. Thus, the acquaintance is only necessary so that the guy can repay with the same kindness. It seems he really doesn't know about Evgenia's past and her portrait on the leaflets. She admits that she has been having difficulty finding suitable work for a long time, so it would be just wonderful if Cheyenne could arrange for her to live in the Duke's house. You can be absolutely sure that Cheyenne will do everything to get her a job. Perhaps she will be lucky enough to become a maid, who just got a raise in salary. The answer will come in a couple of days, so they can meet at the same place at noon. Evgenia is so happy as if he had offered her the position of chief assistant. You should behave more restrained, otherwise such behavior will arouse suspicion. The girl asks to be addressed by name, as if they have known each other for a long time. It seems the time has come to name themselves. In response, they will still see each other often at work. Like Evgenia, he wants normal communication, bypassing unnecessary restrictions. By becoming good friends, they will be able to share not only skills, but also valuable information. Meanwhile, it took Enric much longer to reach Ace's empire. The route turned out to be quite easy, although last time everything was faster. He plans to take a little rest after the report, if Elvery doesn't mind. However, he reminds us that there are still too many things to do today. It feels like the captain is constantly thinking about something of his own, without even listening to the assistant. There was indeed a lot of work, but that is no reason to stop halfway through. Right now, there will be a meeting with His Majesty. This is much more important than anything else. Entering the throne room, he greets the Emperor, who has long been awaiting an audience. As a man who has been through hardship, Captain Enric has no obligation to kneel. In the Emperor's opinion, he is not an ordinary servant and can behave differently. After apologizing for the slight delay, he is ready to begin his official report. This morning, Enric returned after successfully completing the assigned task. Everything was securely hidden in a safe place, as His Majesty the Emperor requested. However, it was not possible to carry out the additional assignment due to lack of time. Moreover, the seal of the previous duke was hidden by someone, and the evidence was destroyed. People who agreed to help died suddenly. This does not seem like a simple coincidence. If he wants to tell about something else, the Emperor asks to do it now. It's better not to even start talking about Miss Eugenia's gun, leaving that for next time. Yet there is one thing that if Enric doesn't say it, he would be making a liar of himself. He has recently started seriously thinking about resigning, and will do so in the near future. 3 years have passed since the captain first made this request. It's a shame to let go of the best warrior from the Shaitan squad at such a difficult moment. The Emperor suggests leaving this question open. They will discuss it a little later. If Enric wants a long vacation, His Majesty will be happy to agree. At this point, he ends the audience because there are other guests besides the captain. Not daring to disobey, the young man thanks for the welcome, hoping for a quick meeting. Perhaps it will be better this way, but the next audience must be the last. Meanwhile, Evgenia is in the company of a new acquaintance. For some reason, Cheyenne is sure that it was not by chance that they met at this very moment. The Duke does indeed need workers, but the only vacancies are in the laundry room. The girl will be happy with any option, so there is no need to apologize for poor work. If you can come to the interview today, it is better to do it as soon as possible. This girl has no equal in speed, especially when the matter is too urgent. I don't want to leave the delicious tea either, after all, it's not free. Not noticing the obstacle, she asks to immediately go to the Duke's estate. It felt like she had hit a wall, even though she was in an open area. Cheyenne was there in time, quickly grabbing the girl before she fell sharply. It's hard to understand what's going on here, but we urgently need to get out into the fresh air. The tea was perfectly normal, unless the guy had added some kind of poison. A short time later, they arrive at the house of Duke Gerace, which she had previously seen only from afar. You need to succeed in your intended endeavor, otherwise the whole journey will be in vain. Cheyenne quickly shows the outbuilding where all the servants live. In addition, the building is sometimes used as the head housekeeper's office. The head maid should be in her office unless she has gone to the main building. It is she who accepts new employees, carefully selecting each candidate. There is no doubt that with Evgenia's past experience there will be no problems. It's strange, but the head maid in this house has to personally open the office door. Having introduced herself to the guest, she asks not to worry about anything. It is just a simple formality. It's better to go inside straight away. It will be much more comfortable to communicate there. It should be noted that Leia knows how to carefully hint that someone should leave. Realizing that the hint was directed specifically at him, Cheyenne wants to have a great interview. However, there is quite a lot of work, so there is no point in wasting time. Previously, Evgenia worked in an aristocratic family, and she had long been accustomed to this kind of work. However, she does not have a letter of recommendation from her previous owners. A situation arose where it was necessary to leave urgently without having time to pick up the documents. As expected, getting a job in a noble family requires more than just experience. Leia is forced to speak about this directly, otherwise the interview will turn into a clown show. Recruitment was completed 2 months ago and all vacancies have long been filled, but Mr. Cheyenne assured that he had met a truly talented girl. If she had a letter of recommendation, she might be able to make some concessions. But now, without any documents, getting a job is very difficult. It is unlikely that she will be able to find a permanent job in such a difficult situation. Leia suggests working until the end of the reception and then leaving the estate. There's only one spot in the laundry room if she's willing to take on the tough job. Evgenia promises to do everything possible to earn the owner's trust. She must show up at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. Her first working day begins tomorrow. Having thanked the head maid, she once again assures her that she made the right choice. This is a great success because documents really do play an important role. The next morning, the children wake up quite early, noticing that Evgenia is leaving again. She promises to return as soon as the first work shift at the estate ends. Every day they show more and more concern, wanting to see her off. True, Joshua refuses a kiss on the cheek, unlike his sister. She had no intention of insisting, although sometimes the prince behaved like a prude. Finally, he advises making friends with new colleagues as quickly as possible. A little more and the boy will believe that he is Evgenia's main advisor. However, it is she who will have to take on what many would not be able to do. On the day of your first work shift, you always feel nervous, even if the work is familiar. You can't afford to make mistakes, otherwise your first day on the job will be your last. Meanwhile, having gathered all the maids in one place, the head maid is ready to begin. First of all, she asks to greet the new maid named Evgenia. From today on, this girl will work in their friendly team, helping in the laundry. Instead of responding smiles, she suddenly realizes that the local maids are not at all happy to see her. This short introduction ends here, because a lot of hard work awaits them. Deciding to get straight to the point, the girl asks to explain the duties of the laundry workers. Instead of answering, Jenny advises not to ask stupid questions and just do the laundry. It is necessary to wash very carefully so that the guests' expensive clothes remain in their original condition. For the sake of the children, one must humble one's pride, although such a greeting is very unpleasant. Soon the master will return to the house and the maids will finally be able to see his face. Some of the maids only saw him once, but even that was enough to make them fall head over heels in love. Judging from their conversations, the young gentleman's appearance resembles someone familiar. It is unlikely that the Duke's face will be more beautiful than the handsome appearance of Captain Enric. She didn't think the atmosphere would be so tense on the very first day. For some reason, the maids are sure that she was hired through acquaintances without the necessary experience. In fact, something similar can be expected when there are only women around. It's nice to come home again knowing that your late visit is always welcome. The food at the Duke's house is indeed very good, but Joshua wants to see for himself. Inside the package are ingredients for preparing a welcome gift. You can try doing this right now if they haven't planned to go to bed yet. If done correctly, the maids will stop treating her so hostilely. Having mixed all the parts into one, Evgenia is almost ready to show the result. This soft hand cream should be appreciated by maids and senior staff. It is unlikely that anyone will remain indifferent after such a gift, knowing the desires of women. At first, Joshua thought she wanted to bake a cake, but today he would have to make do. The next morning, Evgenia is ready to show how to make friends the right way. While greeting the maids in the usual manner, she prepared something unusual. They will surely want to try hand cream made from natural ingredients. No refusal is accepted, so even Jenny will have to grease her delicate hands. At first, the maids don't believe that this cream is good for anything serious. However, the cream really does moisturize your hands, making them soft and velvety, like a baby's. This is exactly the effect that always delights young girls. If anyone wants it, Evgenia promises to bring even more moisturizing cream. Each of them wants to get to know each other better and become the new maid's best friend. Thus, the main obstacle in the new workplace is removed in one morning. A few days later, the second symptom occurs, when the lower back begins to ache with pain. Suddenly she hears a male voice, someone calling her name from afar. Mr. Cheyenne asks that you spare him a little time if it is not too much trouble. That's not the point at all, but he shouldn't visit the maids too often. Jenny asks not to worry about the new girl, she is personally ready to protect her friend. Meanwhile, the young man knows her name, although Jenny does not recall a close acquaintance. Last time he almost forgot to pass on something and still feels indebted. A little sweets never hurt anyone, and they can be divided among all the other maids. Of course, it was nothing, and Cheyenne just wanted to express his gratitude for her help. He then warns of the arrival of the Duke's relatives at the estate. You need to gather in front of the entrance to the house as the head maid ordered. Jenny won't leave her alone unless her new friend shares a little secret about Cheyenne. Evgenia doesn't really want to discuss her personal life, especially when she doesn't have one. If she thinks that they are a couple, this nonsense should be thrown out of her head immediately. There is no time for extraneous matters now. I need to meet with Lady Jacqueline as soon as possible. There was still no answer to the letter, and it was impossible to enter the main building. They'll probably just kick her out without letting her talk about the children and her trip to the duchy. The butler seems to be looking too intently, as if he wants to hint at something. Cheyenne is with him, as is the case in any other place where Eugenia appears. At first he suggested that we become good friends, but there are serious doubts about this. Jenny realized from the very beginning that there was clearly something between the two employees. If she feels unwell, Evgenia can look in the medicine cabinet for some kind of sedative. Soon, all the maids will start to mistake them for a couple if the young man continues his hints. Some of the maids clearly don't like this, which means that Cheyenne isn't just liked by Jenny. The truth is that Evgenia had no intention of starting a relationship at all, keeping the main thing in mind. It is better to settle all issues at once, even if it is met with aggression. As before, she offers her help, trying to act friendly. It turned out that the reason for the anger was not jealousy towards the guy, but towards her parents. For the first time in a long time, her parents came to visit, but she mixed up the dates of the weekend. There is too much work to do, and Mom and Dad can only stay for one day. Realizing that this is her chance, Evgenia offers to take on all the work. The girl can confidently go home, leaving behind all the remaining work in the laundry. You can't keep your precious parents waiting. That's what friends are for. However, the conversation should be stopped if they do not want to receive a portion of anger. At this moment, a noble family from among the guests who arrived at the estate appears in the hall. The butler reports that His Majesty has left the capital, according to the latest information. Lately, he has been going out too often, forgetting about his responsibilities. And yet the owner of the estate is burdened with important matters, but will soon arrive home. Having listened to the absurd report, he asks not to defend his master. It doesn't seem like the head of the family has a good relationship with his own relatives. Now it's time to get back to work. The working day for the maids is just beginning. Of course, Emmy doesn't have to worry. Their agreement about helping is still in effect. Evgenia wouldn't take on extra work, but that's the only way to smooth things over. This maid is respected by all the junior staff. Such friendship is always beneficial. It is important not to mix up the owner's things by putting clothes in the correct box. You have to figure everything out on the fly, trying to avoid making serious mistakes. Clutching Enric's handkerchief to her chest, she mentally asks the sweet captain for help. It's a good thing he doesn't know what she has to do since arriving in the duchy. The responsible maid will come here soon to check the folded items again. They will be given to the very woman who will easily recognize her grandson's hair. The next day, a real commotion begins at the Duke's estate. The head maid demands an explanation who advised Emmy to put her hair in her clothes. The items were delivered from the laundry, so there is no need to look for excuses for your actions. She was the one in charge of the laundry when this misunderstanding happened. In response, Emmy begs him to believe that she would never commit such an act. Evgenia is forced to admit that it was she who took over the shift, replacing Emmy. In other words, the girl has nothing to do with it and only Evgenia is guilty of the offense. In any case, you will have to appear in person to Mrs. Jacqueline if she does not want problems. She is obliged to beg for forgiveness until she decides what to do. Finally, the plan starts to work, because this is the only way to gain direct access to the mistress. 10 minutes later, Leia brings with her the young maid responsible for the incident. Anyone can make a mistake, but in a noble house this is unforgivable. The head maid is also partly to blame, since she is the one who recruits the staff. Never before had the children's great-aunt been so close to Evgenia. Lady Jacqueline asks to be left alone with the maid, dismissing the head maid. Evgenia is glad to meet the lady, although the circumstances could have been more pleasant. From the outside, it might have seemed that she was trying to play a cruel joke in this way. However, this is not the case, because there is another reason for a personal meeting with Lady Jacqueline. Later, she is ready to accept the most severe punishment, but first she must listen to something. A noble lady rarely gives a chance for such repentance to a simple maid. In high society, she is called an example of nobility because of her impeccable manners. For a long time, Jacqueline headed the family of Duke Duras until her health deteriorated. It's no wonder that your body starts shaking on its own when you stand in front of her. Finally, Evgenia dares to ask whether the lady saw her message. It's impossible not to notice in her youth, Jacqueline's hair had the same color. The blue color is inherent in almost all members of the family, starting from ancient ancestors. The only question is why this hair ended up in Lady Jacqueline's clean clothes. She heard that her niece had already died, so her hair could have simply been dyed. Evgenia also has this information, since she herself worked in her residence. But those she brought with her are not the Duke's adult heirs. We are talking about her niece's children, who were only able to move here by a miracle. Everything is exactly as Evgenia said, and this information can be easily proven. Lady Jacqueline's nephew and niece are currently under her personal care. It's hard to believe, but the young master and young mistress are actually alive. The words may sound too ridiculous, but that's why she got a job as a maid. A personal meeting with the owners is impossible unless something out of the ordinary happens. The hair was only needed to attract Lady Jacqueline's attention. She asks to meet the twins. They have no one left except their grandmother. The lady does not immediately agree to this, continuing to doubt her words. Eugenia asks to at least imagine what they had to endure on the way to the duchy. At times, it seemed as if they would never get out of the forest when the carriage overturned while moving. And all for the sake of one day finding himself in the estate and convincing the lady of everything. The word remains with Jacqueline, although she has no intention of taking a simple maid's word for it. As an experienced person, she must put the interests of the family first. Problems may arise in the future because the children left their homeland in a very unusual way. Even if she realizes that she is not lying, Lady Jacqueline may refuse to recognize the heirs. Finally, Evgenia, on her knees, begs for the help that only she can provide. Once upon a time, the children asked an ordinary maid for help, and even she agreed to help. They are confident that the grandmother will definitely take their side once she recognizes her grandchildren by sight. Only now does Jacqueline suddenly understand who exactly they are talking about. She always believed that both heirs also died, remaining outside the duchy. If you refuse to help them, this sin cannot be atoned for in any divine temple. The lady asks the girl to rise from her knees and bring these unfortunate children to the estate. However, if everything turns out to be a lie, you will have to answer to the full extent of the law. Seeing the letter for the first time, the woman simply ignored the latest request. Now she became interested in what was written in it and what she had missed by putting the envelope aside. Only now, having read the message to the end, does she understand the importance of this letter. There is no need to postpone the meeting any longer. Tomorrow the mistress will be expecting the maid along with the heirs. If there are no more questions, it is better to leave Jacqueline alone in her room. This is precisely the answer for which the long journey from the empire to the duchy was made. It must be said that the meeting was quite successful despite all the fears. Family jewels wouldn't have been as convincing as Joshua's hair. Meanwhile, recently the boy asked me to buy him new clothes for a meeting with his grandmother. There is an excellent reason to do this because the lady really wants an audience. Evgenia waited too long for this moment, and it seems she did everything right. Very soon the plot will change completely, keeping only the best. Suddenly she realizes that parting with her children will not be so easy. It's a pity that there is no camera in this world to preserve their faces as a memory. I would like to have at least one photo, because after the confession they may not see each other again. It's hard to accept, but she really does have to part with two angels. Evgenia will no longer put them to bed and watch as the children gradually fall asleep. This is probably the most difficult test she will have to endure. The next morning, everything was almost ready. All that was left was to have a little snack. Evgenia decides to lie a little, saying that she was given a short day off today. Sometimes everyone needs a break, especially when there isn't much to do at work. The pendants that Joshua had long asked for now belong only to them. At the same time, you can buy new clothes to feel more confident. The prince suggests that she stay at home, because on her only day off she needs to rest. Lately, he has been showing such concern, as if someone had replaced the little prince. It was hard to remember the last time they had breakfast together as a happy family. Evgenia would have eaten with her children much more often if she had known how things would turn out. After some time, they approach the dressing room, but the prince is clearly dissatisfied with something. He demands to know how she plans to buy expensive clothes. Until the very last moment, Evgenia did not want to resort to such methods of persuasion, but there was no other way to get the boy to go to the store without being distracted by stupid things. Together they managed to drag him to the threshold, from where he will no longer have time to escape. The most popular outfits of the season were available. All that was left was to choose the best ones. After you select a model, a helpful employee will adjust the clothes to your personal measurements. So, instead of boring old clothes, the heirs are finally getting a change of image. Selmia is the happiest of all. She doesn't care at all about the cost of luxury items. She asks her brother to smile at least once, otherwise he risks offending their mutual friend. The boy doesn't understand why, after just a few days of work, they suddenly became rich. There must have been money in her wallet before, but Evgenia hid it. At this moment, they first learn the news about the upcoming meeting with their grandmother. All this time, Eugenia tried to meet Lady Jacqueline, and she succeeded. You need to look beautiful, as befits the heirs of a noble family. In addition, when meeting, they should observe manners, greeting the lady with respect. There is nothing complicated about this, but it would be better to take this small detail into account. They did a great job of following a common maid around for such a long time. About an hour later, they find themselves at the gates of the Duke's estate. Jacqueline Hannah Garazia has been waiting for a long time outside the door of her missing nephew's room. Evgenia asks them to follow her, and she leads them straight to the main hall. It feels like the children themselves have forgotten why they came this long way. Only by meeting with your grandmother can you guarantee your complete safety. Slowly approaching Lady Jacqueline, Eugenia asks to look at the two heirs. As she requested, the children greet their grandmother with respect and in accordance with all the rules of etiquette. They apologize for disturbing her if their visit distracts her from important matters. Selmia thanks for the opportunity to meet, once again reminding them of Evgenia's help. The children are mainly distinguished by their blue hair, the same as that of Jacqueline's late niece. There is no doubt that they are the very same heirs who disappeared from the house after the coup. It turns out that she has finally found her niece's children and will be able to take them under her guardianship. She seems to be beginning to understand the grief they had to endure during their wanderings. It is a pity that only now is the truth being revealed, returning the heirs to their native family. The princess does not hold back her emotions, although she promised Eugenia to behave more restrained. Grandma asks not to worry about anything. After all, this is not a social event. Now they can behave as they see fit, opening up completely to her. They were deprived of good food for a long time, but this will not happen again. Lady Jacqueline owes a huge debt to the one who dared to take on the role of savior. It was quite difficult to transport them across the border, where there were many ill-wishers. Surely the new ruler's people knew that the heirs were still in the country. Now it's all over. The children will live in the guest residence until Jacqueline's son returns. You can leave them as guests. It has always been a simple formality. Until the issue of moving is finally clarified, Eugenia will also remain in the duchy. They may start to feel anxious due to the sudden change in their life. It is worth helping them adapt faster if the lady allows us to take part in this. Evgenia suggests saving her place in the laundry room so they can see each other more often. No other reward is required, because she did not help for the sake of immediate gain. If she is so sure of this, the mistress allows her to do as she pleases. Lady Jacqueline asks to call Leia. The head maid needs to be given a couple of instructions. Of course, the children will stay with their grandmother. There is no longer any need to live in someone else's house. Evgenia promises to come tomorrow evening. They will still have time to play a little. As expected, separation was the saddest event of the day. She held up well, but little Selmia had time to notice her true mood. Having fulfilled her promise, Evgenia returns to the estate again during the break. After lunch, I'll have to go to the laundry room, otherwise the other maids will be angry. The princess is ready to wait as long as it takes, as long as she doesn't leave them forever. She no longer understands whether she wants to stay here or wants to take everything back. The same goes for Joshua, although his brother tries not to show his true emotions. He asks to treat them as before if there is no staff around. This way, you can maintain your previous relationship, since nothing has changed since the move. Perhaps these words were the best proof that Evgenia did the right thing. Suddenly, the girl decides to apologize for all the inconvenience caused during the trip. Of course, no one expects an apology, because this was the only way to leave the country. If that's all she wanted to say, she should end her shift as soon as possible. Finally, she asks the children to greet the Duke with dignity, presenting themselves in the best light. There was no need to talk about this. Joshua easily takes on this task. Not wanting to let the maids down, the girl hurries to return to her duties. You should apologize for being a little late, although it's unlikely Jenny will accept the apology. Instead, it's worth quickly washing all the gloves. There are more of them here than all the other things. There were probably about as many gloves in Enric's laundry as there were in this estate. Meanwhile, news spreads among the staff about the imminent arrival of the owners. They need to finish the most important work if they don't want to get reprimanded. Suddenly, a child's voice is heard from behind. Someone is asking for help with an important matter. Freddie is the son of an important guest, but he behaves like a real host. He asks to discreetly wash the bedding and leave it in the same place. Instead of greeting the Duke, she is given the most difficult job. The boy promises to return in 30 minutes and personally check the clean items. Today it will no longer be possible to look at the face of the Duke, about whom the maids spoke with such admiration. However, the absence of one person will not change anything in the work of the maids. The Duke did indeed appear at the appointed time, as the head maid had warned. He is rumored to be the youngest person to ever achieve the title of knight. Moreover, His Majesty created a special organization, entrusting its management to him. At this moment, the head butler demands to greet the master of the house. Enric had been absent for so long, it was as if he had already forgotten his own home. All the invited relatives have long since arrived and are ready to begin the general meeting. Elveri asks for a couple of minutes. He has some very important information. Since the mission was successfully completed, he is looking forward to a short vacation. Instead of a vacation, he advises simply relaxing at home and returning to work tomorrow morning. It was too cruel of him, because Elveri was doing his job honestly. Turning to the butler, the Duke asks for a brief account of Lady Jacqueline's affairs. According to Cedric, she is fine and there is no need to worry about that. The lady wants to see her son in her room. She demands that he leave other matters. It's strange that the mother suddenly missed her son, with whom she had little contact. Something special must have happened for her mood to change so much. Having met her son, Lady Jacqueline prepares to tell him the main news, which he does not yet know. She does behave strangely, but the butler did not mention any health problems. On the contrary, her strength noticeably increased, which became good news for her son. After a few words of greeting, the woman offers to drink fresh tea. The aroma of the tea seems incredibly familiar, evoking memories of a certain person. It was Evgenia who first offered this drink, giving him some tea leaves to take with him. Meanwhile, Jacqueline decides to get to the main point, which is why she invited him to her place. He probably remembers her niece, whom he once met as a child. Just recently, a man came to the house who transported her children across the border. Enrique is well aware that the borders are closed and have long been under heavy guard. As is known, blue hair color appears only in their family. This cannot be confused. The maid who returned them to the family turned out to be a very kind and sweet girl. Having compared the facts, he remembers only one person who fits the description. Lady Jacqueline wants to take care of the children until they reach adulthood. Without listening to the end, he asks to postpone the conversation until tomorrow. The road was too difficult. Enric should rest a little. The older her son gets, the more difficult it is to understand his strange character. Even after a long absence, he did not stay with his mother for more than 10 minutes. At the same time, the work was done, and there was no trace left of the yellow spot. The next time something like this happens at night, Freddie promises to find her again. Leia asks not to be distracted by extraneous conversations and to follow her. The friends are already guessing who exactly Evgenia will meet next. The headmaid said only a few words, but that was enough. The young gentleman wishes to meet in person. He is well informed about the latest events. The only strange thing is why he invites her in particular, since Evgenia wasn't even at the reception. Leia demands that they calm down. They are already making the master wait for too long. Approaching his office, the headmaid quietly announces Evgenia's arrival. Now you can go inside and see the true owner of the estate for the first time in your life. Entering the room, Evgenia apologizes for the slight delay. She doesn't understand when she managed to do something wrong and what she will be reprimanded for this time. However, this is not the point at all. You can relax and behave naturally. Just don't say that she didn't expect to see Captain Enric in the office. Today he appeared in a different guise, which means that the service was just a cover. It takes a little time to come to your senses and understand what is happening here. Having pulled herself together, Evgenia asks for forgiveness for her unacceptable behavior. Enric had already warned that he should be addressed by his name, forgetting about titles. He called her right after meeting with his mother. It was Jacqueline who asked for this meeting. If the conversation concerns children, then Evgenia was forced to take them under her guardianship. While accompanying him, he was sure that the fictitious story was true. And yet he must put himself in the position of the desperate girl who was taking them out of the country. By telling the truth, she risked being caught, and the only thing that awaited the children would be an orphanage. No one asked her to do this. She decided to take responsibility for their lives. Eugenia asks him to become their guardian, since Enric himself has become accustomed to them during the trip. Such a decision is not made so quickly. He needs to think it over thoroughly. He decides to tell a little about the meeting for which his relatives came. At such events, children from the lateral branches of the family demonstrate their qualities. As a result, one of them becomes the main heir of the Duke Gerais family. Thus, Joshua and Selmia will become the new candidates, threatening the authority of the others. The fragile peace that reigned in the Duke's family will be destroyed overnight. In such a situation, there is no reason why Enric should take custody of the children. His words explain a lot, and Lady Jacqueline's behavior becomes clear. Evgenia asks to explain why children from another branch are appointed as heirs. It turned out that this was his personal way of checking which of them was the most worthy. It is unlikely that the other potential heirs will leave those she brought in peace. In many ways, Enric was right, because the danger will become even more real than before. Nobody wants to become the owner of someone else's wealth. It's only about security. She asks him to answer directly whether he wants to send the children back to their home country. He constantly emphasizes continuity, being the true head of the family. It is unlikely that there will be anyone who will interfere with his decisions and go against him. Previously, he himself thought so, hoping to solve all problems with the help of his authority. Meanwhile, Evgenia is also very smart and does not at all look like an ordinary maid. It's always nice to hear compliments like these, even when the topic of conversation was different. This is not the first time she calls Enric her master, even though he asked her not to do this. Previously, they communicated quite sincerely. There is no need to exchange this relationship for social etiquette. He again asks to be addressed by his first name, since that is what they agreed on. Besides, there is no point in asking permission if it is high time for her to go. By the way, thanks to that tea infusion, he was able to get rid of insomnia. If she liked the tea, next time she will grab some more tea leaves. Joshua will probably agree to hand them over, although the prince's reaction can be unpredictable. Enric asks to leave them in the stable. There is only one black horse there. She really does have to go, but this conversation will continue next time. She was glad to see the captain, or rather Mr. Enric. Finally, he asks her to take care of herself, hoping to meet her soon in a large group. The question of guardianship remains open, but this does not mean that Enric does not agree. The last phrase was especially pleasant. It says a lot about this man. It was impossible to imagine that they would ever meet under such circumstances. At this moment, Elveri asks for permission to enter. He did everything as the master ordered. This man is already here and ready to undergo a detailed interrogation. Enric was hoping for a short rest, but now that everything is ready, we can begin. Cheyenne doesn't act like a criminal at all, but rather like he's in charge. Soon, Eugenia visits Lady Jacqueline again at her insistence. Earlier, she met her servant, who was sent to the market for medicinal herbs. She guessed that the lady had health problems related to her joints. The girl really does understand more than just laundry, as strange as it may seem. And yet, the main issue of discussion was the future fate of the twins. She recently talked about this with Enric. He already knows about the story of the move. Her son does not change his habits, always leaving his mother in complete ignorance. According to the lady, the girl should be especially careful in her actions. You need to think of yourself as a simple servant and not say unnecessary things in front of strangers. There are many people in this residence who are capable of creating serious problems. It would be better if no one knew about its existence until a certain hour. She will be able to be with the children for a while, but it will not last long. Thus, every day brings closer the moment when they must part. It is worth warning in advance about leaving, otherwise it will be considered an escape. By continuing to stay in the Duke's family, she makes the biggest mistake of her life. Moreover, she has already promised to find a guardian who will take care of them. As usual, Evgenia cheerfully enters the nursery, leaving her doubts at the threshold. But instead of their usual behavior, for some reason they are in no hurry to run towards her. It would be just wonderful if someone turned to face the incoming guest. Realizing that they are not alone here, the twins immediately break away from their activity. Selmia explains that all this time they have been practicing writing correctly. She is reluctant to show her handwriting, which looks too much like a crawling worm. Joshua asks not to say stupid things. Her handwriting is quite suitable for serious documents. Her brother always supports her, wanting to give his sister a nice compliment. Evgenia remembers very well that contract, written in the hand of the young gentleman. If he can write so well, then Joshua will be the one sending the letters. From this day on, they will not be able to see each other as often as before. They don't know yet, but yesterday Enric arrived here, with whom they had an important conversation. As expected, the children's reaction to this man's name is completely opposite. Selmia eagerly awaits details while Joshua expects a catch. In fact, the conversation was quite serious and something should be confessed directly. Very soon, Evgenia will be looking for a new job when the guests leave the estate. This means that she will no longer be able to go into the nursery every day. Having thought it over carefully, she came to a conclusion that suggests itself. The contract came to an end, like everything else in real life.